Hey Merfolk fans and Soul Herder fans, I'm Joe. Thanks very much for joining me today. If you'd like to support my channel, please check out the link above to my Patreon page. So I got back from vacation and uploaded a Soul Herder deck tech video. Thanks to you guys who watched it and shared your comments. It was nice to hear that other people also are kind of excited by this new Soul Herder deck. I've been playing it when I have time, but right after I uploaded that deck tech, I ran into some problems with playing Magic and uploading videos. I got a really bad sore throat. That took like a week to resolve. And then my work and my wife's work both got sort of crazy, still kind of crazy. I've got my mother-in-law visiting from out of town for 3 weeks, staying with us. Let's see, I had some dental surgery done, so, I couldn't really talk for a little while. So anyhow, a bunch of stuff preventing me from making these videos. But I had a quiet morning here, and I wanted to take the opportunity to upload a couple replays for you guys of just matches that I've had, fun matches with Soul Herder, show you guys some more gameplay. The deck is pretty much the same since the deck tech. I've replaced the remands with Watcher for Tomorrow. This guy's pretty amazing at digging through your deck to find what you need, whether you need card draw or counterspell or a removal spell. Digging 4 each time this guy triggers is pretty insane. You can bury a Force of Negation underneath him. If the opponent casts, a big, scary, non-creature spell, you can ephemerate the Watcher, get your Force from underneath him, and counter the spell. Just very versatile, very flexible. The downside to Watcher, for those of you who don't know how Hideaway works, is that it enters the battlefield tapped. So against really aggressive decks, we want to get blockers down early, like against Burn, where they're hitting our life total constantly. We'd love for this guy to be able to trade with a Goblin Guide right away, but he enters tapped. So in a metagame that's extremely aggressive, he's going to be a weak choice. But in a more open field, like online, where you have, I guess, combo decks and control decks that are not immediately attacking your life total, Watcher can be pretty sensational for digging through your deck. So I've been running 3 of him, and he's been doing pretty well. Additionally, I've been running a couple of Muldrifters. This card is just broken with Ephemerate. I said during the deck tech a number of times that Ephemerate is the most powerful spell in this deck, and I've played, another couple or few dozen matches, and continues to impress me. So you can cast Muldrifter for its evoke cost of 3 mana, and then when it enters the battlefield, there's an evoke trigger that says to sacrifice it. So you put the trigger on the stack first, and then draw 2 cards above that. So you draw the 2 cards first. You have a chance, if you don't have it in hand already, to hit an Ephemerate off of the draw 2. Then, with the sacrifice trigger still on the stack, you can Ephemerate the Muldrifter. It blinks it, and when it returns, it's a new object. It's going to draw 2 more cards. It's not going to be affected by the sacrifice trigger that's still sitting on the stack. And you get to keep your 2/2 flyer. So it's a really sick combo with Ephemerate. For 4 mana, you get to draw 4 cards immediately. And then when Ephemerate rebounds during your next upkeep, you get to draw another 2 if Muldrifter is still around. So basically 6 cards off Muldrifter, and it's like drawing a new opening hand. I've heard people inquire about Muldrifter, saying, we've got so much card draw in the deck already. Can we afford to spend our flex slots on more card draw? And the answer really is, I don't know if 2 is optimal, but Muldrifter is in a completely different league from the rest of our card draw. You've got Icefang Coatl, Coiling Oracle, Watcher for Tomorrow, all basically netting you 1 card per blink. Now, Muldrifter with Ephemerate, as I just mentioned, can pretty easily get 6 cards, and that's just a world of difference from 1 card. So when you're looking to play something like Jace, that you play him for 4 mana, and you brainstorm, that's great. You look at 3 cards, maybe you have a fetch land, you net a card, and you get to shuffle your library, get rid of 2 cards you don't want. When you compare the 4 mana investment for Jace against the 4 mana investment for Muldrifter and Ephemerate, Muldrifter just draws you 6 cards. I mean, it's a little better than brainstorming. So I've been loving Muldrifter, although I have to say I'm kind of excited to test a more Planeswalker-heavy version of the deck. there was a version running Little Teferi, Big Teferi, and Jace alongside more Time Warps. The idea being that we've got a lot of little creatures. We can protect our Planeswalkers, keep accruing value with them. I mean, they tend to be win cons unto themselves, the Planeswalkers. And with Time Warp, you get even more value out of your extra turns because you get extra Planeswalker activations. So I've been meaning to test this 3 Planeswalker build, but don't have the cards yet online. Super interesting. There's still so many directions that the Soul Herder shell can take. So yeah, the big differences between the deck tech have been adding Watcher for Tomorrow instead of Remand, and Muldrifter in place of some other I guess flex slots. I've gone down to 21 lands. I've got a pretty low curve, Time Warp pretty much, and Muldrifter at 5, topping things out. But Muldrifter you can evoke for 3. The 21 lands with 4 Noble Hierarchs seems to work pretty well for me. I still have the 4 forces, and you can see that I have a bit of a Swiss Army knife of a sideboard over here. 2 Celestial Purge, 1 Winds of Abandon, a single Spell Snare, Disdainful Stroke, Veil of Summer, 2 Collector's Oofs, well, two Disdainful Stroke, really helpful against big mana decks. You've got like Scape Shift, Primeval Titan, as well as Tron decks. 2 Weather the Storm, primarily for burn, but also great against extremely aggressive creature decks. A second Deputy, not sure if that's critical in the sideboard. A second Knight, and then a single Grafdigger's Cage as some sideboard hate. Actually, I think I might have 2 of those guys. I do. I decided to try not running Rest in Peace, since it messes with our Eternal Witness loops so much. Grafdigger's Cage, it's gonna shut down like Coco decks, Cord decks that are trying to bring creatures onto the battlefield from their library. Obviously also hits decks that are trying to cheat creatures in from the graveyard. Also hits Snapcaster, though I'm not sure we're always bringing this in against Snapcaster decks. Hits Storm, clearly. They can't cast cards in their graveyard with Past in Flames. So yeah, 2 of those guys, and I actually haven't gotten to cast Veil of Summer in a game yet, but the idea behind it just seems so strong. I could easily see going up to maybe 2 or 3 copies in the board. It draws a card if the opponent has cast a blue or black spell, so against Death Shadow, against Jund, any of those decks. This card just cycles, but it also says your spells can't be countered. So if we try to, for example, resolve a Soul Herder, an opponent cast Cryptic Command, we cast Veil of Summer. Now the Soul Herder can't be countered. If they cast a blue spell, so we get to draw a card. And now our permanents gain hexproof from blue and black until the end of turn. So if the opponent had, I don't know, like a Fatal Push in hand, now when Soul Herder resolves, they're not going to be able to kill him with Fatal Push. The card just does a lot, and I'm excited to start testing it. Collector Oof has been outstanding, so I'm pretty solid on 2 of these guys. And yeah, Spell Snare, really great in this sort of experimental meta where everybody's messing with Stoneforge Mystic. Spell Snare counters that. And Winds of Abandon has actually been pretty absurd. This deck is great at getting to sort of board stall-y states because we've got so many little creatures preventing the opponent from getting in sort of successful attacks. During a board stall, we get to 6 mana, overload Winds of Abandon, and, basically a one-sided board wipe. Pretty sensational. So good, in fact, that I've been experimenting swapping out the 4th Path to Exile for a singleton Winds of Abandon in the main. So that's the deck. Let's go ahead and jump into the first replay. Okay, so here with a replay of Game 1 of a match against an unknown opponent here. So this is a pretty lovely opening hand. It'd be nice if the opponent played something that could be deputied on turn 2, because we're going to get a turn 1 Hierarch, so we'll have 3 mana on turn 2. It's nice to have our engine card in hand. Nice to have Ephemerate as sort of the most powerful card in the deck. And a Force, clearly. This is a great opening hand. So I'm going to keep, and I believe the opponent kept as well. All right, so Scalding Tarn, going to crack it, go down to 19. Lava Spike, okay. So, burn, basically. Our deck is a little weak to burn game 1. We've only got a single Knight of Autumn in the main deck. But there is a new card that we're going to start testing soon. I have it open here. called Charming Prince. This card is going to scry 2 or gain 3 life, or basically flicker another creature, comes back on your end step. Super flexible abilities, super flexible casting cost, just 1 white mana, 1 generic. Card seems like a home run in this deck, sort of at least 2 copies I can see. Going to replace a couple of Watcher for Tomorrows, I think. And yeah, having at least 2 of these guys in the main deck, going to get life gain going early and hopefully repeatedly with Soul Herder and Ephemerate against decks like Burn. Looking forward to testing this new card when it comes out in early October, when Throne of Eldraine is released. Okay, so what am I going to do here? Basically just Snow-Covered Forest, Noble Hierarch, go. So Burn opponent could have removal for the Hierarch, maybe like a Searing Blaze or something like that. And there it is, Searing Blaze, but we have the Force. So I'm going to go ahead and pitch the Deputy of Detention. Opponent doesn't have like the double or triple Goblin Guide start, so Deputy probably not going to be super valuable this game. And I was saying though that we do tend to be a little bit weak to Burn in game 1. Just have to do our best. Put another Hierarch out, try to ramp our mana a little bit. We don't have a lot of value to be gained from playing Soul Herder yet, so just going to start getting in with Double Exalted. Take the opponent down to 16. So Boros Charm, opponent's got some gas, down to 13, and then Suspended Riftbolt. Okay, we can go ahead and get our Hallowed Fountain, giving us more access to white and blue mana. It does hurt having all of these pain lands, for sure, in the deck, but in game 2 and 3, we're going to have access to Weather the Storm and an additional Night of Autumn for more life gain. So here I'm going to go ahead and play out my Soul Herder. Unfortunate that I'm not going to be able to get real value out of him yet. Just going to start growing him on the end step by blinking the Noble Hierarch that attacked. Opponent's Riftbolt is going to come off Suspend here, and yeah, we're just hoping he's got some lands in hand at this point. But they're opening with Lava Spike into Skewer, into Skewer. Okay, so that was pretty much the nut hand from Burn. They had the, what was it, turn 1 Lava Spike. They had the turn 2, Searing Blaze for my creature. And then they followed it up with Boros Charm and then 3 1 mana, 1 mana, 3 damage spells. So excellent game for Burn. Pretty clunky from our side. Let's go ahead to game 2, check out a little bit of what I did with the sideboard. I'm not sure I had the exact configuration I just showed you during this match, but we'll check it out. All right, back for game 2. We're going to check out the sideboard. Looks like I took out my single Winds of Abandon, took out all 3 Watchers. Those guys coming in tapped is a real liability in this matchup. 1, 2, 3, 4. Took out our Deputy, that's 5. And then I would have brought in a Spell Snare, a couple Weather the Storms, extra Night of Autumn, and one other card that, I'm not going to spend too much time thinking about right now. And this is a beautiful, beautiful hand. We've got some ramp, we've got some life gain. Play that Vista, crack it, get a Forest. Get Hierarch out here. Hierarch does so much for this deck. A lot of people have been asking, do I really need the Hierarchs? They're really expensive. Can I run Bird of Paradise? Can I run Aether Vial? Noble Hierarch gives us access to all 3 colors of our mana that our deck runs. So it's not just ramp, but it's really a lot of mana fixing. And then the Exalted is so excellent, when we have just like a 1/1 flyer. If you have a couple Noble Hierarchs, that's a 3/3 flyer. So yeah, I've been so impressed since adding Noble Hierarch to the deck. Okay, Lava Spike, the Hierarch is going to live. Now, we have some choices in this spot. The opponent can untap and play Searing Blaze, which would obviously be pretty bad, but we have a Spell Snare in hand, and we've got an Icefang Kotal at instant speed. We've also got a Path to Exile, so we've got a lot of instant speed options. There's no rush to play the Night of Autumn. We don't have an Ephemerate in hand to start blinking it. We don't have a Soul Herder, so I think we can sit back on the Night of Autumn a little bit and just hold up our instant speed effects here. Oh, additionally, Eidolon of the Great Revel is insane against our deck because all of our spells cost 3 or less. So going for the Searing Blood, trying to basically 2-for-1 me. 3 to the face, 2 to the Noble Hierarch, but we have the Spell Snare ready, so that singleton coming in real handy. I am going to fetch and shock here to play my Kotal, draw a card, and start attacking for a little bit more damage. That Eternal Witness is pretty good. Can get back Spell Snare, can potentially get back Night of Autumn if it goes to the graveyard, gain more life. So I'm going to start off here just with the Night of Autumn. 4 life is a pretty big chunk, effectively countering and then some, one of their three damage spells, or just countering like a Boros Charm. So gonna get in for 2 here. Opponent's gonna go to 16, and feeling pretty good at this point. Okay, Lightning Bolting the Hierarch. Opponent very savvy, noticed that I missed my land drop. And then going for Eidolon here. So whenever this guy hits the battlefield, we pretty much want to get rid of it right away. So I'm going to go ahead and Path the Eidolon here. The reason I chose Path over Purge, obviously, is so that I can cast the Hierarch this turn. I didn't draw land. But if I play the Hierarch, I'm going to be able to play one of these 3 drops next turn, hopefully. And with Hierarch out, I can swing for 3 with the Knight here. Okay. One's going to Helix the Hierarch, prioritizing getting rid of my mana sources rather than going after my life total. Interesting approach. Okay, so they have another Eidolon. So without Hierarch on the board, we can't cast Soul Herder, which would clearly be our best play here, since we can just start blinking the Night of Autumn. As I mentioned, with an Eidolon out, we just want to get rid of that guy. Take our 2 damage. Celestial Purge is a really great card. It just exiles a red or black permanent. So it doesn't ramp them like Path to Exile, just straight up gets rid of it. And without Hierarchs Exalted, we can just crack in with both creatures. Opponent's life total continuing to tick down. All right, so now they Helix the Night of Autumn. Go ahead and get in with Ice Fang. Still can't play the Soul Herder, so I think the best option here is just to get out another creature with Eternal Witness. Opponent has a Skullcrack. They had the 2 mana up. I'm not sure that it was best for them to go ahead and play that now or just continue holding it. They're not going to be able to kill me next turn, and with Eternal Witness, I'm going to be able to get back my life gain, so probably better for them to hold the Skullcrack in hand, I would think. All right, so grab that Night of Autumn, pass to the opponent, and that guy's coming down next turn. Okay, Boros Charm into Skewer. So, you know, pretty good stuff from the opponent, but it can be hard for them to keep up with me gaining, you know, chunks of 4 life. So back up to 7. Get to swing in for 3. Opponent's down to 8. We're sitting comfortably at 7. Opponent draws 1 card, passes back to us. We've got 5 power on the board. This is how this deck rolls, you know, just 2 damage, 1 damage, 2 damage, 3 damage. Eventually the opponent, you know, is at 8 and we're swinging for 5. With 2 Soul Herders in hand and a Night of Autumn here, so the opponent takes all this damage. Okay, they go down to 3. And we're going to go ahead and get out our engine here. All right, Boros Charm us down to 2. Soul Herder is just going to gain us another 4 with Night of Autumn. Gain 4, and we're back up to 6. With opponent drawing 1 card each turn, it's going to be hard for them to outpace our life gain. Searing Blood was a great draw for the opponent. They get to kill a Soul Herder and deal 3 to us. And then they're going to cycle the Sunbaked Canyon and play an Inspiring Vantage. Back to 0 cards. We do have another Soul Herder in hand, so it's kind of unnecessary anyway. We've got the 5 power. And that's how things tend to go against Burn in games 2 and 3. Post sideboard, we're either going to draw a Weather the Storm and gain like 9 or 12 life, or we're just going to, you know, draw a Night of Autumn, gain a bunch of life. And with that spoiler that I showed you guys, Charming Prince, things are only going to get better against this matchup, I think. So let's go ahead and see how Game 3 went. All right, back for game 3. The burn player will be on the play. And the opening hand. This is a mulligan. One of the requirements for a sort of a keepable opening 7 is to either have Hierarch into 3-drop or to have a 2-drop in hand, and this doesn't sort of meet that standard. Or against burn, you keep a Weather the Storm. This hand has no creatures, but Weather the Storm is enough that we're going to want to keep it. If we can get them after they cast 2 spells, Weather the Storm will gain us 9 life, effectively countering 3 of their cards. So pretty balmy in this matchup. So Goblin Guide, hopefully going to find us a land off the top. Force of Negation, not terrible. It's quite strong in the matchup, in my opinion, but we don't have a blue card currently. I think we're just going to play the Snow-Covered Plains, let the Goblin Guide trigger one more time, and then probably path it. All right, so going to bolt us, and then skewer us, and then attack us. So looks pretty good from the burn opponent. There we go, getting the Windswept Heath. We'll dispatch the Goblin Guide with Path to Exile. Opponent's down to 3 cards, and there's a Codal that we're not going to be able to cast yet since we played this basic Plains. We can go ahead and play a fetch land though. That'll probably this at this point. If the opponent goes like Lightning Bolt, Lightning Bolt, Lightning Bolt, we can play Weather the Storm, gain 12 life by getting a green source. Or if they really don't do very much, then we can just go ahead and fetch a duel. Alternatively, though, we might want to fetch a basic, since Codal doesn't have Death Touch until we have 3 other snow permanents. All right, so here's Eidolon, which means we're going to basically cast Path this turn. I'm curious whether against our deck, this guy is trying to play around Weather the Storm by only casting like 1 spell per turn. All right, so I'm going to get a dual land here. I chose not to Path yet because Path is a cheap spell that we can use to build up a nice Weather the Storm. All right, so there's a Misty. We can go and get an island with this, and then cast, let's see, Path to Exile, and then Weather the Storm. Alternatively, if we still don't feel like playing Weather the Storm yet, with the island we can cast Icefang Codal. But we're definitely going to Path the Eidolon first. Because remember, each of our spells is going to hit us for 2 with the Eidolon on the board. The time has come, we're going to get rid of that guy. Give the opponent another basic mountain. And yeah, they're just passing, so we've only cast 1 spell at this point. Remember, we're still trying to get a sort of a multi-spell turn going, so not going to cast the Codal yet. Go get another dual land. Play the basic forest, and we're setting up here to basically cast Codal into Weather the Storm. Okay, opponent cycles their Sunbaked Canyon, or cracks it, I should say. Play a tap land and a skewer for full price. I think it might be time to start using our mana. We want to get a creature out here, so we'll get the Codal onto the battlefield, see what we draw. Force is pretty nice. We'll start holding up that, and we'll gain 9 life here. So you can see really the power of this card. So up to 14 life. Got a counterspell. Got a creature on board swinging with Exalted. And now it's time to start catching up. So the opponent's going for Path to Exile. I can't counter it yet because I don't have 2 blue. But I can Ephemerate it. So Ephemerate the Codal is going to draw me another card, effectively counter the Path to Exile. Another Ephemerate is pretty nice. We're going to get the Rebound Ephemerate and start drawing some cards. All right, opponent cracking another Sunbaked Canyon. And another full price skewer. I'm gonna let that go. Of course, we could Pitch Force, but it's just a 3 damage spell. We're sitting at 14. Okay, so with the opponent on 1 mana and seemingly low on options, we're gonna go for the Ephemerate on their end step. It resolves, we draw another card, and we're gonna get double Ephemerate Rebound. draw a card, and draw another card. And then draw for our draw step. And you can see how the value just piles up with this deck. So we've got 2 more creatures now to play. Let's go ahead and get the Oracle out. Another Noble Hierarch. I'm going to increase our Exalted triggers. Get to swing with 2 if we want to, but seems like a better option just to leave up double blue for Force of Negation. Hard cast. So that's 4 damage. That seems like a great target for Force. If the opponent has something else, like another Boros Charm, we can just pitch the second Force using Icefang Kotal. But it looks like they just pass. Another Hierarch. Multiple Hierarchs really show off the impact the card has on the deck, because what looks like a pretty anemic clock with 0 power and 1 power creatures, we actually get to start cracking in for 4 power here. Okay, opponent is going to path. And, you know, this doesn't really set me back too much, because next turn I can attack with the Kotal. I've got another Kotal, and Force just seems better for spells that might actually threaten my life total. So let that resolve. Get another basic out of my deck. Okay, so we can go ahead and flash in the Kotal now before Eidolon resolves. I'm sorry, I've been saying this a little bit wrong. This is an interesting word that I've been saying, Kotal. It's a word from, I think, the Aztec culture, and it's pronounced more closely to Coatl. So props actually to Saffron Olive for pronouncing this card very well. Actually, it's he gets some things kind of mixed up, but he nailed this one. So it's actually Icefang Coatl. So Coatl's gonna get in there before we get hit for 2 with an Eidolon trigger. Draw another land, doesn't really help us too much, but we've got flyers with triple Exalted. Actually, let's make that quad Exalted here. It's worth taking the 2 from Eidolon to add the extra point of damage to the clock. Getting in for 5 with this Coatl. Opponent takes 2, casting a Goblin Guide. Now, whether I block or not is going to depend, I think, on what Goblin Guide reveals. And he revealed another Coatl, so pretty easy decision just to block this guy and get him off the board. We're only attacking with 1 creature each turn anyway. Opponent choosing not to attack with the Eidolon because I guess they feel like I'm under pressure from that thing, but I'm the one getting in for 5 each turn right now. Okay, so we get that quad Exalted, swing for 5 in the air. Opponent's down to 6, which means that if they cast any spells, they're dead to this Coatl. So I'm happy to take 2 here. But I'll flash in this Coatl anyway, see what it draws. But, you know, it's a decision to be made if I want to block or not. We might want to cast some spells ourselves, and just getting a creature off the board seems reasonable. He couldn't have too much to deal with these guys, really, right? Because if I say I don't block, I take 2, go down to 5. There's no single spell in the burn deck that could deal me 7 damage. I guess he could have Light Up the Stage, reveal Boros Charm and Lightning Bolt. But I have a Force in hand, so really, if I don't block, Eidolon lives. He can't cast spells, because if he casts any spells, he's going to lose life, and then I win with Exalted attacks with Force backup. But it looks like I chose to block. I don't know. I've mentioned multiple times that we want to get rid of Eidolon right away, but there can definitely be situations in the late game where you effectively lock an opponent out, and I think that was one of them. So a slight misstep, blocking that Eidolon. Well, opponent follows up with another one. Back on 0 cards, and I don't know. This knight is pretty much gonna close things down, go back up to 9 life, swing with the quad Exalted, and we've got Ephemerate to blink the knight to gain more life. Okay, opponent down to 1. They get in again. We're going to take it this time, since at 1, it's pretty clear that they can't cast spells anymore. Get in with the Icefang. Quad Exalted. Opponent goes down to -4. So, actually feel pretty solid with the burn matchup with this deck. Even if game 1 is unfavorable, games 2 and 3 improve dramatically when we get more life gain creatures that we can start blinking. I could have, at instant speed, gained 4 more life with Night of Autumn in combination with Ephemerate. Still had Counterspell backup. I mean, it feels pretty comfortable. Weather the Storm is just insane. If an opponent does ever cast 2 or 3 spells, then we follow up with like a Path to Exile, an Icefang Coatl, and then Weather the Storm. I mean, the potential is so huge with this card. You can gain 15 or 18 life off of 1 2 casting cost green instant spell. So been loving that card in this matchup. Please let me know your thoughts down below. Have you guys been playing Soul Herder? What do you think of the burn matchup? Have you tried Weather the Storm either in Soul Herder or in other decks? Do you have any other Soul Herder tech that helps against burn? Yeah, just leave your thoughts down below. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. I am going to start regular uploads again at some point. And if you'd like to support the channel, please take a second and check out my Patreon page. I'm going to go ahead and end this video. I'll upload another couple matches in another video. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you guys there.